What if the world you see every morning is not the world that truly exists? What if the sky above you, the rules of life you are taught, and even your sense of freedom are part of a carefully crafted illusion? And what if an ancient force, older than every religion, every empire, every philosophy, has shaped your reality without you ever noticing? These questions may feel uncomfortable, but they open the door to a truth that Gnostic sages believed humanity was never meant to discover. For centuries, spiritual seekers spoke about a hidden architect of the physical universe, a power that governs everything you touch, everything you fear, and everything you think you control. This being, known as the Demiurge, is not portrayed as evil in a simplistic way, but as a ruler trapped in its own ignorance, convinced that its creation is the ultimate truth. Jonas, one of the most respected scholars of Gnosticism, dedicated his life to understanding this mysterious figure, and what he uncovered still shakes the foundations of philosophy and spirituality today. As you look at the image of this descending cosmic entity, surrounded by rotating circles filled with symbols, hovering over a silent crowd, ask yourself something. Why did ancient mystics insist that humanity lives under a power we cannot see? Why did they say that this world is a copy, a shadow, a distorted reflection of something far greater? And more importantly, why were these teachings suppressed for so long? Throughout this video, you and I will walk through the forgotten manuscripts, the hidden interpretations of early Gnostics, and the echoes of their warnings that survived in fragments. But before we go deeper, take a moment to breathe and open your mind. Because once you understand how, according to these ancient teachings, the Demiurge secretly rules this world, nothing about your everyday life will ever look the same. If you're someone who seeks truth beyond appearances, who feels that something about our reality has always felt off, then subscribe to the channel and stay close. This community is growing, and together we uncover the revelations that were buried for centuries. Now, let's begin. To understand the Demiurge's secret rule over the world, we must first face the central problem that the ancient Gnostics saw with absolute clarity. The world we live in feels incomplete, conflicted, and strangely disconnected from any sense of divine perfection. They asked themselves a question that almost no one dares to ask today. If a perfect infinite source created everything, why does our world feel so limited, painful, and unjust? This question was not rebellion. It was a sincere attempt to solve a contradiction that traditional explanations could not answer. Jonas explains that the early Gnostics were not simply dissatisfied with life. They perceived a deeper fracture in reality itself. They noticed that our world operates under laws that seem rigid, mechanical, and often hostile to human spiritual growth. They believed this was not a coincidence. To them, this strange heaviness of existence, the suffering, the cycles of conflict, the sense of being trapped in material limitations, hinted at an intelligence behind the physical universe, but not the highest or most benevolent one. This was the first sign of the Demiurge. In the image you provided, the massive circular mechanism above the city captures this idea perfectly. It looks like something divine at first glance, but the closer you observe, the more unsettling it becomes. Its beauty is structured, geometric, almost too perfect, as if it were engineered, not born from pure spiritual light. And the luminous figure descending from it? The Gnostics would see this not as a savior, but as an architect, a ruler convinced that its creation is the only true world. It stands above humanity, not beside it, overshadowing rather than liberating. According to ancient texts like the Apocryphon of John, the Demiurge is a being who created the physical universe without full knowledge of the true divine realm. He believes he is the supreme creator, but he is unaware of the infinite spiritual world beyond his reach. Some scholars, including Jonas, emphasize that this figure symbolizes not just a cosmic ruler, but a system, a structure that governs reality and shapes consciousness. And here lies the problem the Gnostics wanted humanity to notice. We live inside a cosmic system that limits our spiritual perception. convincing us that material life is all that exists. Ask yourself something honestly. Have you ever felt that there is something missing, something you can't name, but you can feel? That sensation of spiritual disconnection, the strange emptiness that no success or material comfort can fill. The Gnostics believed this was the first message from the soul, whispering that the world is not the final truth. If you have ever felt this, tell me in the comments. Your experience is more important to this story than you think. When the early Gnostic communities tried to explain why our world felt so distant from true divinity, they turned to ancient visions, revelations, and secret teachings that circulated quietly on the edges of the ancient Mediterranean. These were not loud doctrines proclaimed in temples. They were whispered truths shared among small groups who felt the same discomfort with the world's apparent structure. Many of these texts were destroyed or lost over time, but the ones that survived, the Nag Hammadi Library, the Apocryphon of John, the Hypostasis of the Archons, and others paint a picture so shocking and so precise that modern scholars like. Hans Jonas recognized a pattern. The Gnostics were trying to describe a cosmic system that humanity was never supposed to see. And when you look again at the image you chose for this video, the massive circular mechanism in the sky, filled with impossible symbols, rotating above the city like a divine machine, you can almost feel what the ancient mystics felt when they tried to describe the hidden architecture behind existence. According to the Apocryphon of John, the universe did not begin with the physical cosmos we see around us. Instead, it began in a realm of pure spirit, a dimension of absolute light called the Pleroma. This realm was not a place, but a state of perfect harmony, where divine beings existed in unity with the source. The Gnostics described these beings not as gods in the mythological sense, but as expressions or emanations of the infinite. They called them eons. The world we live in, they insisted, is a distant echo of that realm, a fractured reflection created by a being who emerged not from the highest light, but from a mistake in the cosmic process. That being was the Demiurge. Hans Jonas emphasized that the Gnostic texts never described the Demiurge as a simple villain. Instead, he is portrayed as a powerful but limited creator, a cosmic craftsman who believes himself to be the ultimate God because he cannot perceive the realms above him. In the Hypostasis of the Archons, he declares, "I am God, and there is no other beside me," a phrase that shocked ancient readers not because it challenged other religions, but because it revealed his ignorance. The Gnostics believed that this being, sometimes called Yal Dabaoth, constructed the physical universe as a closed system, a kind of spiritual quarantine that traps the divine spark within human bodies. They saw him as the architect of a world where suffering, confusion, and conflict feel natural, not because humans are flawed, but because the Creator himself is disconnected from the true source. If you return to the image for a moment, notice how the descending figure appears majestic yet unsettling, bathed in light yet emerging from a dark and cavernous sky. This visual tension between radiance and confinement mirrors the Gnostic depiction of the Demiurge, a being who shines but does not illuminate, who descends but does not liberate. The geometric rings behind him symbolize what the texts called the heavens, not the spiritual heaven of the Pleroma, but the layered spheres of the material cosmos, each governed by powerful forces known as Archons. These Archons, according to the Gnostics, enforce the laws of the Demiurge, shaping human destiny and perception. They are not demons in the modern sense, but cosmic administrators of the system, maintaining order in a reality designed to keep souls unaware of their true home. Jonas argued that these ancient descriptions were not random myths, but attempts to articulate a profound spiritual intuition. The intuition that the material world operates like an immense machine, orderly but impersonal, beautiful but indifferent to human suffering. The Gnostics saw this machine not as the masterpiece of the highest God, but as the product of a lesser being attempting to imitate divine perfection without understanding it. This imitation, they believed, is the reason why beauty exists in the world, but is always touched by impermanence. Why joy is always shadowed by loss, and why humans feel an inner longing that nothing in the physical world can satisfy. Let me ask you something personally. Have you ever felt that your soul does not fully fit into this world, as if you were born with memories of a place your mind cannot recall? The ancient Gnostics believed this was the evidence, the soul remembering the pleroma while living inside the creation of the Demiurge. If this resonates with you, leave a comment, because your experience is part of the revelation we are uncovering together. To truly understand how the Demiurge rules this world, we must look deeper into the symbols and forces that the ancient Gnostics believed shape human life from the moment we are born. They insisted that the physical universe was not simply created, it was engineered, not in a technological sense, but in a metaphysical one. A structure of laws, patterns, and invisible boundaries was woven into reality, forming what Jonas described as a cosmic mechanism. And when you look at the image on your screen, the colossal circular structure etched with symbols, spinning above the city like an ancient celestial device, you are witnessing a visual metaphor for what the Gnostics believed had been hiding above humanity for thousands of years. The Gnostic texts speak of 7 spheres, each ruled by a powerful entity known as an Archon. These Archons were not imagined as monsters or demons, but as cosmic governors, beings who enforced the laws of the material world, maintaining the illusion that the Demiurge is the highest authority. Their function was not simply physical. They governed fate, emotion, thought, and perception. The Gnostics believed that every human soul, at birth, descends through these 7 spheres, absorbing influences, limitations, and fragments of each Archon's nature. This is why, according to their teachings, we enter the world already burdened with confusion, fear, and forgetfulness. The Archons ensure that the soul forgets its origin in the higher realms before it enters the body. Jonas explained that to the Gnostic mindset, this system of control was not arbitrary. It was the necessary framework of a universe built by a being who wanted order but lacked divine wisdom. The Demiurge, believing himself to be the supreme creator, fashioned a world where everything must obey strict patterns, the cycles of time, the laws of matter, the trajectory of the stars. And these patterns, the Gnostics believed, form a kind of spiritual cage, not because they are inherently evil, but because they limit the soul's ability to perceive anything beyond material existence. The Archons became the guardians of this system, enforcing it with unwavering precision. Looking again at the descending figure in your image, notice how it is both radiant and confined, as if made of light, yet chained to the machinery behind it. This is exactly how the Gnostics saw the Demiurge, a being who shines with borrowed light, unaware that the radiance around him comes from a higher source. The circular rings behind him resemble what ancient mystics called the heavens, each filled with symbols, representing the forces that govern human experience. The city below, dark, passive, unaware, mirrors the condition of humanity in the Gnostic worldview, a population walking beneath an invisible structure that influences their lives without their conscious knowledge. One of the most important symbols in Gnostic writings is the serpent of wisdom, not as a tempter or deceiver, but as a messenger of awakening. Some texts describe a moment when the higher realms attempted to reach humans, trying to spark memory within the soul. This awakening, however, was perceived by the Archons as a threat. In the hypostasis of the Archons, the rulers of the 7 spheres become enraged when humans begin to question their reality. It is in this moment, Jonas says, that Gnosticism reveals its central tension. The universe is not neutral ground. It is a contested space where the soul tries to rise while the system tries to keep it asleep. The Gnostics believed that certain symbols, the circle, the spiral, the geometric cross, carry hidden meanings that can awaken memory. The massive circular structure in the image is, in this sense, a perfect representation of the cosmic map they imagined, a series of layers through which the soul must ascend if it wishes to reclaim its divine origin. Every ring, every line, every symbol is a reminder that the physical world is a reflection, not the source. A design, not the truth. Let me ask you something directly. Do you ever feel moments where the world seems too mechanical, too predictable, as if life were following a script you never agreed to? Have you ever experienced déjà vu, sudden intuition, or a strange sense of knowing that seems to come from nowhere? The Gnostics believed these were cracks in the system, moments when the soul briefly sees beyond the veil of the Demiurge's creation. If you've experienced anything like this, tell me in the comments. Your voice helps others realize they are not alone. To understand how the Demiurge's rule remained hidden for so long, we must confront a delicate but essential part of the Gnostic narrative. The idea that the truth about the cosmos was not merely forgotten, it was actively distorted, reshaped, and reinterpreted by systems of power that feared what this knowledge could awaken in humanity. Jonas explains that the Gnostics were not fighting against a religion or an institution. They were fighting against a mindset, a worldview that insisted the material universe was perfect, complete, and unquestionable. Anything that challenged this idea was labeled dangerous, heretical, or even insane. Because if people realized that the world was not the final creation, that there were realms above the Demiurge's universe, then the entire structure of authority built on the belief in a single unquestionable creator would collapse. The ancient Gnostics understood this threat, and they paid the price for it. Their teachings were scattered, their writings burned, and their communities driven underground. But why were their ideas considered so dangerous? Jonas suggests that it was because Gnosticism placed spiritual authority inside the individual soul, not in any external institution. If every person carries within them a spark of the divine realm, a piece of the infinite source, then no earthly system, no cosmic ruler, and no material power has the right to claim absolute control. This was a radical notion in a world where authority depended on cosmic hierarchy. To say that the Demiurge was not the ultimate God was to question the entire philosophical and religious foundation of the ancient world. Look again at the image you selected. The luminous being descending upon the city does not look like a liberator. It looks like a ruler, a judge, a creator who watches from above. The people below stand silently, unaware, as if accepting the presence of this overwhelming force. This visual echoes the Gnostic perspective that humanity has been conditioned to accept the visible world and the powers behind it as divine by default. And this is exactly the belief structure that ancient institutions worked so hard to protect, not because they were evil, but because their worldview was based on the assumption that the creator of the physical world must be the highest being. The Gnostic message threatened to unravel this logic completely. Jonas noted that Gnostic writings often portray the Demiurge as a figure who misunderstands his own origins. He is not malicious. He is ignorant, convinced that the world he built is the ultimate truth. This misunderstanding mirrors how early societies interpreted the cosmos. They saw the sky, the stars, the cycles of nature as evidence of divine perfection. But the Gnostics insisted that these were only layers, reflections, imitations, boundaries, constructed by the Demiurge and guarded by the Archons. Anything that suggested the existence of a higher, invisible realm was dismissed or suppressed, because it disrupted the coherence of a universe governed by a single, all-powerful creator. As Christianity, Judaism, and other traditions solidified their theologies, the Gnostic view became even more unacceptable. To claim that the physical world was created by a lesser being risked being interpreted as an attack on God himself. But the Gnostics were not attacking God. They were differentiating between the true source, which is pure and infinite, and the craftsman who shaped the physical cosmos. This distinction was simply too complex, too foreign, and too destabilizing for early religious communities. So the Gnostic voice was systematically pushed aside in favor of more unified doctrines. Jonas believed that the suppression of Gnosticism was not only religious but psychological. Human beings crave order, stability, and certainty. The idea that the world is imperfect because it was built by an imperfect being challenges our deepest need for meaning. It forces us to confront not only the nature of the cosmos, but the nature of ourselves. If the Demiurge is not perfect, then our suffering is not divine punishment. It is a flaw in the system. And if the system is flawed, then awakening becomes not an act of rebellion, but an act of remembrance. Let me ask you, do you feel that certain questions about life are discouraged, avoided, or treated as if they are too dangerous to explore? Have you ever felt that challenging the official narrative, whether spiritual, historical, or philosophical, is seen as a threat rather than curiosity? If so, tell me in the comments. This channel exists so we can finally ask the questions humanity was taught to fear. There comes a moment in every Gnostic narrative and in every seeker's life when the structure of the world stops looking natural and begins to look intentional. Jonas called this moment the philosophical shock, the instant when a person realizes that the confusion, suffering, and spiritual disconnection present in human life are not personal failures, but symptoms of a deeper cosmic design. And this is where the Gnostic revelation becomes truly transformative. Because once you see the flaw in the system, you begin to see what the ancient mystics insisted was hidden behind it, a truth so powerful that the Demiurge himself, according to the texts, tried to conceal it from humanity. That truth is simple, yet overwhelming. The spark of divine light inside the human soul does not belong to the Demiurge's world at all. It comes from a realm far above him. This revelation changes everything. If the soul originates from the infinite pleroma, then human beings are not children of the material cosmos. We are exiles in it. And suddenly, all the strange feelings people experience, the longing for something they cannot name, the persistent sense that this world is not enough, the flashes of intuition that feel like remembering instead of learning, begin to make sense. They are not psychological quirks. They are memories, echoes, signals from the realm of origin, filtered through the dense layers of the Demiurge's creation. Jonas emphasized that this awakening is not intellectual, it is existential. Once the soul recognizes that its true home lies beyond the cosmos, the entire structure of power that holds humanity captive begins to crumble. Look again at the image that accompanies this video. The massive circular mechanism in the sky, engraved with symbols and radiating light, appears at first like something divine. But now, with the Gnostic perspective in mind, it reveals its true nature, not a sacred gate, but a cosmic interface, the machinery of the Archons, the architecture of the Demiurge's domain. The descending luminous figure, majestic yet eerie, is not a messenger of the highest light. He is the enforcer of the system, the keeper of the illusion. The people below, small and unaware, symbolize the human condition before awakening, obedient, confused, waiting for meaning to descend from above, unaware that the true source is not above the sky, but beyond the entire structure. The turning point of Gnostic thought lies in the realization that awakening does not come from the world. It comes from remembering what was known before entering it. And this is precisely the revelation that threatened ancient systems of authority. Because if every human carries within them a spark of the infinite source, then no external force, not the Demiurge, not the Archons, not institutions, not dogma, has absolute power. Awakening becomes a personal act of liberation, a rebellion not against society, but against spiritual amnesia. And this is what the ancient texts tried to communicate through myth, symbol, and metaphor. They did not want to frighten humanity. They wanted to remind it. Some scholars believe that the moment of awakening was symbolized in Gnostic stories by encounters with divine messengers, beings not of the Demiurge's realm, but from the pleroma itself. These messengers appear as light within the soul, a sudden insight, an intuition that feels older than the body. They are not here to save humanity from the world. They are here to remind humanity that the world is not the final truth. Jonas interpreted this as the core of the Gnostic message. Salvation is not obedience, but knowledge. Not faith, but recognition. Not worship, but self-remembering. Let me ask you something directly. Have you ever experienced a moment where you suddenly felt that your life was part of a larger story? A moment where everything seemed connected, meaningful, or strangely familiar? Have you ever sensed a presence, an idea, or a clarity that felt like it came from outside the world you know? The Gnostics believed these were signs that the spark within you is beginning to wake up. If you've ever felt this, share it in the comments. Your voice may help someone else recognize their own awakening. If everything the Gnostics taught is more than just symbolic poetry, if the Demiurge truly crafted a material system designed to keep humanity focused outward instead of inward, then the question becomes unavoidable. Is this cosmic mechanism still operating today? Jonas believed that the Gnostic worldview was not simply an ancient myth, but a psychological and philosophical map of human existence that remains relevant in every era. And when you look closely at modern life, the parallels become impossible to ignore. We live in a world that constantly distracts, overwhelms, consumes, and exhausts us. Every force around us pulls our attention toward the external, the physical, the immediate, the material, leaving little room for inner inquiry. This, Jonas suggested, is the hallmark of a system that wants humans to forget who they truly are. Consider how society teaches us to define ourselves by achievements, possessions, social roles, and physical appearance. From birth, we are conditioned to seek validation from the outside, to compete for limited resources, to accept the world exactly as it is, even when it feels incomplete. The Gnostics would say that this is not accidental. They believe the Archons operate not only in the heavens, but symbolically in the structures of life. Rigid systems, oppressive expectations, the pressure to conform, the fear of questioning authority. These are not literal cosmic beings manipulating humanity in a cartoonish way. They are the forces that keep consciousness focused on the physical layer of existence. And when consciousness remains trapped in the external, the inner spark forgets its origin. Look again at your video's cover image. The colossal circular device in the sky may look ancient, but its symbolism speaks directly to our modern world. The geometric rings resemble the cycles we live inside: work, consumption, routine, repetition, spinning endlessly above us, shaping the rhythm of our days. The luminous being descending represents any authority that claims to define reality for us, whether political, cultural, or even psychological. The silent crowd below mirrors the modern condition. People surrounded by information, yet unaware of the deeper mechanism influencing their thoughts. This image is not about a mythological god descending from the sky. It's a metaphor for the system we live in now, a system that appears luminous, structured, and orderly, yet leaves many feeling spiritually empty. Jonas insisted that the Gnostic message was not pessimistic, it was diagnostic. The problem is not the world itself. The problem is mistaking the world for the whole of existence. When people experience anxiety, depression, loss of meaning, or existential confusion, modern society often tells them they are broken. But the Gnostic interpretation turns this idea upside down. These feelings are not signs of personal failure. They are the soul's rebellion against forgetting. They are the first cracks in the illusion, moments when the inner spark whispers that something is missing. Instead of being flaws, they are symptoms of awakening. This is why the Gnostic path is not about escaping a world, but about seeing through it. Jonas explained that awakening happens not when a person acquires more information, but when they recognize that reality is layered, that the visible world is the first layer, not the final one. Once this recognition begins, everything changes. Daily life becomes less about seeking validation and more about remembering identity. Suffering becomes less about punishment and more about misunderstanding. And spiritual longing stops feeling like confusion and starts feeling like the soul calling home. Let me ask you something from a place of sincerity. Have you ever had moments where life felt like a pattern repeating itself? Like you were moving through days that felt predetermined, as though you were inside a system designed long before you arrived? Or moments where you felt a sudden clarity, as if the world around you paused and something inside you whispered, "Wake up"? The Gnostics believed these were the crucial moments where the Demiurge's influence weakens and the soul begins to remember the pleroma. If any of this resonates with your experience, share it in the comments. The community reading this may find their own memories reflected in your voice. If you've followed this journey until now, you've already crossed a threshold that many people never dare approach. You've looked at the world not as a fixed, unquestionable creation, but as a layered structure, one that the Gnostics believed was shaped by a limited creator, the Demiurge, and maintained by forces designed to keep humanity focused only on the surface of existence. Jonas taught that understanding this ancient perspective is not about rejecting the world, but about expanding it, realizing that the visible universe is only the first chapter of a much larger story. And once this possibility enters your mind, the walls of ordinary life begin to feel thinner, more transparent, as if something beyond them is waiting to be remembered. The image that accompanies this video, the luminous being descending from the cosmic mechanism, now carries a different meaning than when we began. It is no longer just a mysterious figure in the sky. It is a symbol of the system the Gnostics tried to reveal, a reminder that authority often appears magnificent and unquestionable until the moment you see what stands beyond it. And the people below, still unaware, represent the condition most of humanity remains in, searching for meaning in a world that was never designed to fully reflect the divine. If this revelation awakens something in you, if it sparked a memory, a question, or a sense of recognition, then let your voice be heard. Comment your thoughts, share your experiences, and join this community of seekers who are ready to question the structures that once felt unbreakable. Your participation is not just support for the channel. It is a way of keeping alive the knowledge that was almost erased from history. And now I leave you with the final questions. What if the longing you feel is proof that your soul comes from beyond this world? And what if awakening is not discovering something new, but remembering what you always knew?